Well, come on and welcome aboard the Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you with Coyle and Leary, also from the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios, of course, powered by Rivals. Make sure you go to indiana.rivals.com and sign up if you haven't already, because we've got lots of stuff headed that way. I'm looking forward to talking to Coach Ray Looze from the Indiana women's program as well, as they have made a resurgence here of late. I think Coach is joining us right now. Looking forward to him, but multiple-time Coach of the Year, 11-time Coach of the Year. Coach Ray Looze joining us now here on the program. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing great. Just like everybody else, spending some time with family at home, and eager to get back to my routine, which I really, really miss. And so just making good use of the quarantine, and thinking of new ideas and really putting my mind to work on what we can do in the future here at Indiana University.
Yeah, we talk a lot about during this time, athletes, whether it's a basketball player or a football player or whatever, it doesn't matter, to having to find a place to work out. And, now if we talk about swimming, we're talking about a whole different animal here. A basketball player can go find a park and try to, find a goal. You can't just find a pool anywhere.
No, you can't. And even though a pool is a really safe place to be because apparently the COVID-19 virus doesn't really like chlorinated water, they're closed like every other institution. So from a physical standpoint, we're looking to lakes and trying to pray for this weather we've been having recently to continue so that those lakes warm up, because we got some beautiful lakes in southern Indiana.
Yeah, go ahead. Should I expect to see you out here at Lake Monroe anytime soon?
You should expect to see people at Lake Monroe for sure.
So I will now. At least I will know what's going on out when I see those guys. I'm like, what in the world? So now we have a heads up. We got Lily King joining us later in the show. Looking forward to her. Obviously, one of the greatest swimmers, period, of all time. Doesn't matter male, female. I mean, you look down at what she's accomplished, and I started laughing because I'm like, it would take me an entire show just to list the accomplishments that she's achieved.
Yeah, she's amazing. I'd say the world record and the gold medals are super impressive. And the world record's the best that ever was, but something that's more impressive is the 8 individual NCAA titles. She swept the 100 and the 200 breast all 4 years. So a 4-year period like that, where, maybe you survive a lot of times when you don't have your A game. She's the best breaststroker we've ever had in this country and quite possibly the world.
And that's saying a lot for anything. And I was talking about training, all this. When we're talking about anything, Olympic level, training, achievements, it supersedes everything in all of sports in my mind.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to go against the very best that the world has to offer. So the margin for error is very, very thin, and the world's so vast. There's millions of swimmers, and there's always somebody coming up, always, that you have to rise up and meet that challenge. So it's a real humbling endeavor.
And Indiana has been fortunate. They've had possibly the 2 most dominant swimmers on each men's and women's side. Mark Spitz, of course, still reigns as one of the most dominant swimmers. Of course, since then we've had Michael Phelps come along, but his legacy still stands. For one school to have possibly the 2 most dominant on each side, that's amazing.
It really is, and it goes back to the legacy of Doc Councilman. When he came here in 1957, we weren't known as a place for swimming and diving. And he got things going in the 1960s. Of course, the 70s were his heyday with the likes of Mark Spitz and Jim Montgomery and Gary Hall. But, it had been a long time. It had been 40 years since we put an American on an Olympic team by the time 2016 came around. So the fact that it had been done before, I think, made it a bit easier. But, we're lucky to have that legacy and that tradition at Indiana. We really are.
And not only that, Indiana was known for, was a swimming power and still is, but really resurgence here of late on both sides, men's and women's as well. Let's talk about your team. You guys are looking good as well. What are your expectations for this upcoming season when we get to it? Because I'm confident we will, especially since, like you said, you guys are maybe in the safest place, but you guys are really back to where you want to be.
Yeah, I expect our women to, get back to contending for Big Ten titles and, um, continue to be a top 10 team. Our men, most likely, we were third with the men this year in the conference, but we were most likely going to be third in the nation because we had a very good NCAA team. So we get some redshirted athletes back this coming year. So I think our men can be a Big Ten championship team if we dive and swim well. And have a hard time moving up from third, but anything's possible, because the Texas and Cal Berkeley are pretty stout in front of us. But if we do our best, then anything's possible.
Yeah, and swimming's kind of a unique sport because it's one where the men and women can train together and coach together, which is very different from any other sports that we see.
It is. And I would say our men and our women love training together. They complement each other, and beyond a varsity women's team and men's team, we have a pro group that's about 15 strong of men and women. And that unique mixture that is kind of you would only see that in a swimming and diving program is just it's a dynamic environment. People walk on our pool deck and they're like, wow, now this is an Olympic culture, not just a good culture, not a great culture, but an Olympic culture.
And swimmers are different athletes to me. I remember being in high school and junior high school, but there was a kid that was my age and his hair was bleached out because he was in the pool every day swimming. And I remember that. And I remember that to this day, that to have that kind of discipline in individual events, like how Lily has dominated her discipline, but the discipline it takes for individuality, it's mind boggling to me to do that over and over and over to get better and better.
It's, I try to think of sports that are harder than swimming, and I came up with a couple. I think rowing, world-class rowers, they put in as much time and energy as we do. And I think boxers, when boxers are in training, they're literally training all day long.
I was thinking wrestling, so I'm right with you on the boxing. A similar thing, yeah.
And in boxing, you get hit back. So
yeah, I think that's right.
That's a difference maker.
That's right. That's it. It's very true. Absolutely. Yeah, I remember wrestling, and it blew my mind because it's a completely different thing. Just like swimming, it's a completely different use of the cardiovascular system. It's a completely different use of the muscles because you're using every single muscle you have when you're swimming.
Yeah, I shouldn't forget about wrestling because those poor guys don't get to eat. They're going to work out hard, and then they don't get to enjoy a big meal like we do. But swimming's it's an all body exercise, upper, lower, cardiovascular. Now we got to be strong and lift a lot of weights. So it's the whole deal.
And now the athletes that you have now that will be coming back, that obviously great disappointment not being able to compete this year. How do you mentally keep them moving forward and get past this? Because it's tough for all of us. But man, when you put all that effort into it, like I look forward to talking to Lily because they've moved the Olympic trials now. It's a whole another year of training. So when you're geared towards that mentally, what are you having to do to work with them on that regard?
I never had a Zoom call until 2 weeks ago, but I'm, we're becoming familiar with that tool. We had a team meeting yesterday and it started off great. And then we tried to break up into smaller groups and it totally fell apart. So we're trying to use things like Zoom to stay connected and to keep the mental well-being of our team in place. So we had a doctor talk to him about, best practices and also maybe when we might see a return. I guess in Indiana, this pandemic is supposed to peak April 16th and maybe, be in a much better place by May 1st. I just saw that this morning. So he kind of went over that information. We had a nutritionist talk to him, but we're just trying to stay in front of them and keep them interacting even though they're not with each other.
Yeah, and training wise, what are they doing now that they can't physically train? Because again, I know it's all the same for all athletes, but it's not the same for all athletes because training is much different for some, especially swimmers.
Yeah, we had a head coaches meeting of all the coaches at Indiana, and the track coach is like, we're doing all right because we can go outside and go for a run. Largely, we're not doing much. Because swimmers are notoriously poor runners. I think we're attempting to do it, but we're not great at it. So we don't have a whole lot going on physically, And now Lily's different. Being a pro, she's been able to do a little bit more with me. There's an NCAA ban on working with your varsity athletes right now, but where we can, we're working with our pros in a gym and in a small 1-lane pool, private pool. But it's a great distance away, so it's not easy.
Is giving Lily King another year to train bad news for the rest of the world?
In her case, she was ready to go now, and I think she'll be ready to go then. So, you'd have to ask her that question. I know she was ready in 2020. That's kind of what we mentally prepared for. But just like anything else, you have to adjust, and she's pretty good at that.
What do you got coming forth next year? Some of your greats that are going to be coming back, Coach. Who are some of the kids that you're expecting big things out of?
I think Michael Brenniger, he redshirted this year. He's coming back as a sophomore, and I think he's really going to do a good job, and it'll benefit a young guy like that having some more time. He's a distance swimmer. Andrew Copabianco, he's an NCAA champion diver. He's coming back. Bruno Blaskovic from Croatia, he was one of the best swimmers in the NCAA this year. He'll be coming back. Emily Weiss from Yorktown High School, she's coming back for her sophomore year. Those are just to name a few of people that we're excited about, but we got some really good swimmers that I think are going to do well. Cora Dupre, she'll be coming back for her sophomore year. We had a really good freshman girls class that I'm excited to see what they do as sophomores.
I think I saw some of the guys down in Brazil attempting to train.
They were, but they got quarantined the minute they got in the country. So,
oh man, can't wait for losing.
Anybody that wasn't from Brazil left, and the Brazilians they're down there with their families just like everybody else. University sent everybody home. So it was funny. I was reading about Sir Isaac Newton yesterday, and in 1665, the Great Plague hit London, and even back then they sent the students home. They knew well enough to send the students home. And I was telling the team this story because in the 2 years that he had to stay at home, he came up with his theory on optics, his theory of gravity, and came back, and within like a year they made him a professor, something crazy like that. So, it's happened before, and it'll happen again, hopefully not in our lifetime.
Yeah, it certainly will. Coach, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. It's a weird time out there, but I hope everybody gets back together, but continues to stay healthy, and we keep moving forward.
Yep, you'll enjoy talking to Lily. She's very entertaining.
She is great. We love her. Yeah, she is one of the most personable superstars I've ever been around.
Yeah. You guys take care and stay safe.
This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.